This video is going to teach you everything you need to know about the truth of synesthesia. It is so much more than how people perceive it. And it is essentially a superpower that is going to activate your multidimensional consciousness here on Earth. And it's going to help you really change the game when it comes to your reality creation and your reality navigation. This is going to change everything you think you know about energy, even psychic abilities. In my experience, synesthesia is even more useful than simply just being psychic. And I've honestly never seen this being discussed anywhere. So from my experience of having synesthesia all my life and learning how to utilize that in practical terms, I will teach you everything that you need to know to make use of this superpower. It is essentially a superpower. So what is synesthesia? The way that synesthesia is widely discussed is from a human perspective, someone's ability or almost like an abnormality to perceive a single sensory perception and translate it to another sensory perception. So an example of that would be you could visually see a sound, or you can associate a specific color to a date or a space, or you can see a smell or smell a sight. So it's like taking these compartmentalized sensory perception and being able to fluidly perceive an interlinked sensory perception from that. And that is partially true, but it's not the entire truth. So I want to help you understand it on a higher level. And most likely you will find out that it is so much more relatable than how this limited way of perceiving makes synesthesia to be. A more relevant expression of synesthesia that I can share with you is like when I'm walking down in a forest in a very meditative state and I hear some birds singing, and I literally saw these sound frequencies emitting from that part of the tree as like these sparks of light, but it was like synesthesia of me witnessing that. And I've had multiple experiences where it was very tangible, where I could experience the harmonic interchange between my various sensory perceptions. But the actual truth of the matter is, if you're rooted and anchored in higher dimensions, that's essentially the truth around what you perceive and everything you perceive. And of course, my personal kind of mission and how my work unfolds to be in a lot of cases is I am a seer. I can see dimensions. I've seen dimensions since I was a little kid, and it's just an ability that I have to see into other dimensions. And a lot of times can be simple translation of one sensory perception to its interlinked web of data and frequencies and information, which is synesthesia. And the truth of the matter is, on a higher dimension, on a higher dimensional anchor point, say for example on the 8th or the 9th dimensional way of looking at something, and I really don't like to put these numbers, but they just come up in my cognizance as that's where the dimensional pivot points are occurring. So I mention it because perhaps it's like helping you activate something within, but I don't necessarily generally like to categorize which dimensions things come from. But say for example, when you look at a perspective of the 8th or the 9th dimension, that is the case that whatever way that a frequency manifests in a single individuated form has a web of networks to other ways that it manifests in various streams. So if there is a certain time frame, it is true that it holds a certain rate of frequency depending on from which point of the time continuum are you rendering that specific time. So an example is like, what does the month of November, looking at it from June of that same year, appear as in a color frequency or a sensation or a sound frequency, for example? So another example is a sound frequency definitely has an interlinked visual representation of it. But that kind of translation occurs because there is an actual level of these frequencies that are harmonic and interlinked on a higher level. So your job isn't to actually try to find what other manifestation of the sensory perception is related to whatever you are interpreting, but it's more so about finding that level of consciousness that is already united in all omnidirectional sensory perception. And if you commune with extraterrestrials properly, not just false light extraterrestrials, but real extraterrestrials, or if you go into a state of consciousness where you are truly activated with that level of extra dimensional perception, which extraterrestrials just, they are. And people tend to confuse what these extraterrestrials are, but essentially it's just a reflection of your piece of consciousness, the facets of consciousness that has already transcended time and space, hence the extra dimensions, and hence the transcendence of time, and hence the transcendence of the spatial cognition that we have on this third dimension. But regardless of all that, if you actually render reality from that perception, if you actually say truly contact that level of consciousness, you will quickly realize that however it is that you make sense of everything, of reality, of the universe, of the galaxies, of the planets, of the individuation, of the extraterrestrials, of the different galactic groups, all of it will disappear because you'll start rendering reality from this space of unified sensory perception. And so all these words and concepts that we're using on the third dimension, it literally has no relevance. So we can say like, oh, that's an Arcturian starship, that's an Arcturian galactic council. That is true from how we're rendering it, but from that space, from that actual space of consciousness, all of this is gibberish. Like, it just doesn't even. But we all have the right to actually enjoy that level of consciousness and relating to that level of consciousness with all these concepts. That's totally acceptable, and it's a cool part of how we're living. But I'm just saying, that's the level of consciousness where, for example, colors manifest in all different frequencies of sound, light, sensation, smell, and it is not about, again, identifying which are linked with what, but it's about resonating in a field of consciousness where it is actually all connected. All the sensory perception is connected. So what happens when you actually embody that level of consciousness from a subjective space or a more material plane, which a lot of extraterrestrials actually do have a more material, tangible incarnation, and we all have a material, tangible incarnation. The fun part of it, when you're accessing that level of high dimensional consciousness, like the 9th dimensional consciousness, 8th dimensional consciousness, it comes with this ability to fluently interchange between the sensory perceptions. So when you actually master this and notice how you can fluently transition from one sensory perception to another, the veil of the illusion of the limitations of this reality shatter. And it's some sort of enlightenment. Enlightenment has many shades, but this is like one of the ways that you can truly penetrate into the core truth of existence. And I believe this is one of the most powerful experiences for people to have, to glimpse enlightenment, because it is so viscerally tangible when you see that you could visually scope a sound, or when that you could actually see an emotion, or that you can actually hear a smell, and it kind of just interchanges. And then this is the truth around when people say everything is all one. This is a visceral experience of that oneness, and it is extremely enlightening. And once you anchor that in your system, you can start to hack through life. The way that you manifest, the way that you create energy, the way that you transmute energy, the way that you deal with relationships, the way that you go about your spiritual connection, your career, everything in your life, and the way that you navigate through this veil becomes supercharged with almost like, you know, when you're playing a video game, and like a good example that I can use is the Super Mario, and there's this like mushroom or the star icon that you can eat, and then the star icon gives you like this veil of invincibility. That's almost like synesthesia. If you have it active, there's no way you can unsee the unity of reality. So I'm sharing this to activate something in you, and so that you can consciously start to embody this, and that you could cautiously start to create this for yourself, and you have an access point to that. And obviously tomorrow I'm going to be sharing an energy session to activate your synesthesia interface. So, say, for example, the way that you can utilize this for manifestation is all of the processes of anchoring down certain frequencies. You can target it from multiple different sensory perceptions and translate it directly into your system. And it is so much more effective than going at it from a linear level. This is a holographic download that you can actually create as a packet. Some people who may be really intrigued by this or have a very strong connection to this, especially our Arcturian starseeds, Arcturian galactic systems, and the incarnations that are more physical, they utilize these states of synesthesia as ways of communication, ways of co-creation, ways of healing. And so if this is activating something within you, this is also that Arcturian frequency. Obviously, many different galactic families specialize in this form of synesthesia. These are the star groups that have diligently really specialized in these technologies. So this is an actual consciousness technology. And let me tell you something, people are always so terrified of external technology. Like, oh, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, we're gonna end up like this, we're gonna end up like that. Let me tell you, if you actually work on these internal technologies, there's nothing, like, it is so powerful that you can't even fathom how safe and protected you are against external power. Have you ever thought about the skills and abilities that you actually have? And once you work on this perception and consciously build it and amplify it, you'll notice such a significant shift in the states of your consciousness, because what it takes to activate these gifts and abilities is going to wake up the dormant galactic codes in you and the true nature of the oneness that you are. And this is your visceral experience of oneness. People think oneness is like, oh, all the people, they should love each other and not separate and don't, blah, blah, blah. It's not about experiences as people. It is quite literally begins with energy. And this is unity consciousness. Synesthesia is a subjective unity consciousness. It is one of the most direct ways to enlighten your consciousness. Okay. I hope that this video has been helpful. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to check out all the other videos that are in this 24-day activation for advanced starseeds, you can check out the playlist below, and I'll see you tomorrow in the synesthesia activation. Bye.